So I've been playing Sonic the Hedgehog. The year is 19 who gives a shit, and an evil corporation called Nintendo has a monopoly on the video game industry. And leading their cavalry was a sinister plumber called Super Mario. For years, Nintendo and Mario ruled supreme over the video game industry, until another evil corporation called Sega threw their own hat into the ring. In order to combat the evil dictators of Nintendo, Sega knew that they needed a mascot of their very own. So, they got together to design the most raddest, most coolest, most 90s looking motherfucker ever created. Alex Kidd. Sadly, this didn't work out all that well, as Alex Kidd kinda sucked in terms of being a mascot. I mean, jumping on turtles and eating mushrooms? Cool! Radical! Great! But playing rock, paper, scissors? Lame! Stupid! Boring! So they tried again and again until they created the most watertight corporate marketing scheme ever. I am, of course, referring to Sonic the Hedgehog. Yeah. The story of Sonic the Hedgehog is about the evil Dr. Robot Egg Nick Man stealing the Chaos Emeralds to harness their power. Why? I don't fucking know. It doesn't matter anyway, as Sonic the Hedgemaze is here to foil his evil plan. Why? I don't fucking know. It doesn't matter anyway, as gameplay is here to save me from this segment, which is literally going nowhere. Fuck. Now, Sonic the Hedgehog is, of course, a 2D platformer. So, much like Mario, the blue bomber jumps on his enemies and over obstacles, and the objective is to get to the end of each stage. Sonic also collects rings that double as a form of health, as Sonic can take an extra hit as long as he holds at least one ring. And, well, it's just a 2D platformer. There are many others quite like it, but this one's Sega's. Honestly though, I sincerely doubt that there would be anyone watching this that doesn't at least have a basic understanding of how to Sonic. And the only reason that I bothered explaining this was because I'd feel bad calling this a review if I hadn't. Unlike most other platformers though, Sonic was obviously marketed as fast. And just like literally every Sonic game ever, only the first stage seems to reflect this. Because as soon as the second stage hits, you'll find yourself pushing blocks, shooting guns, getting lost, or playing God of War. If you've seen my Sonic Advance review, you already know how I feel about this, so I won't go into all of that shit again. But in a stark contrast to Sonic Advance, the level design here seems to be done by people that actually bothered to give a shit. In fact, I was actually kinda surprised by how much I ended up enjoying this game. I mean, my Sonic Advance review was more or less a projection of me venting my years of bottled up frustration towards the entire franchise. And while everything I said there most certainly applied to the game of reviewage, I was quite foolish to assume that it would apply to all of the others. Well, it certainly does to an extent, and I will get into all of that later. But what I'm trying to say is that while I definitely think that Sonic's overall design is still a load of old bollocks, at least this is a fairly well designed load of old bollocks. All that said though, I am sort of torn about whether or not I actually like the game based off of its gameplay or all of the other bits. I mean, I really like the aesthetic that this game has. It's not really like anything else apart from the other Sonic games, and they really shaped and created their own little world just by visualizing everything in an off-kilter kind of way. I mean, dirt doesn't actually have checkerboard patterns and ruins aren't usually purple, that sort of thing. And the game's music fits this weirdness perfectly as well. Taking full advantage of the Genesis's sound chip, it has a lot of funk and early heavy metal influences, which isn't really the type of music you'd usually associate with platformers. And when I think of why I like this game, these tend to be all of the reasons that come to mind. Of course, that could just be me, cause as I said, this game does have some pretty well thought out level design, even though it isn't focused on going fast all that much, and I definitely had fun while playing. But the more I think about the gameplay after the fact, the more I tend to notice how much of it ends up being projected in a negative light. I mean, Sonic's momentum is still an absolute bitch to get used to. Because of the whole speed thing, he starts off building up speed slowly. But since most of the game consists out of platforming, you ironically end up going even slower than Mario. It just kind of feels like you're lugging around a bag of beans whenever you jump. Luckily, this game is a bit less blinded by its own marketing than some of the later games. And while it is often criticized these days for not having really found its stride, I honestly believe that this game is much better off because of it. I mean, the game is slow, yes, but the level design hasn't been diluted with ham-fisted speedy bullshit. The game isn't anywhere near as maze-like as some of the later games, and it doesn't throw you around quite as much either. There are no random spikes or excessive amounts of bouncy pads and loop-de-loops or anything else that may cause irritation when applied to the skin directly. This is probably one of the few, if not the only Sonic game where you are in control 100% of the time. So, the level design overall actually ends up flowing a lot better as a whole. Once you get a feel for the general pacing, it is a pretty good platformer that just so happens to be bogged down a little bit by laggy controls because of Sonic's momentum. However, something that has always thrown me off a bit about this game ever since I was a wee lad is the fact that the game can feel a bit selectively glitchy at times. Or, well, maybe not glitchy per se, but just a bit janky perhaps. I mean, that whole momentum thing is already a bit off-putting to begin with when it comes to the overall feel of things. But once hitboxes start failing, animations start playing at times when they shouldn't, and frame rates start shitting themselves more often than they probably should, it may just be kind of an issue. Well, nothing that really breaks the game, I guess, but it just feels a bit sloppy. And I'd prefer it if my hedgehogs weren't sloppy. Something else that also didn't leave the best of impressions is this one level with little platforms that move, but they only go up. So once it's gone, you're actually stuck. Now, the reason why I say that this feels sloppy more than anything else is because I don't see why they would do this on purpose. There's no challenge to it or anything like that. It just feels like it's Sega going, "You are stuck now, motherfucker, so kill yourself and try again."
Oh, thank you, Sega-senpai.
Now, fuck you too, bitch. Overall, it's still actually a pretty good game though. It's heralded as a classic for many reasons, and while some of those reasons may very well be bullshit, I do think that it deserves its spot on the list of games people remember for reasons mostly beyond me, though probably mostly nostalgia and also because kind of okay good. It's not quite as messy as some of the later games, but it also lacks the speed that the diluted messiness brought. So it'll mostly depend on which one of those you value and what you expect from a Sonic game if it really holds up or not. For me personally though, I actually found myself preferring the slightly slower and more focused pace of the level design here. I mean, going fast is fun, but considering that doing it will most likely get you your ass kicked anyway, I'd say that this is probably the better option. But on the other hand, getting good at the faster style of play certainly has its merits as well. And in the end, that may very well have a lot more longevity. I don't know. This series is confusing, because, you know, it's obviously kind of confused itself. The fact that it's even around still honestly kind of baffles me, especially when you consider that they stopped improving and only kept doing different things, failing in different ways for like the past 10 years or so. But luckily, this game is still pretty okay good regardless. Also, for anyone paying insane amounts of attention to things, I have indeed cheated lives. Thing is that I'm of the opinion that having to restart a game entirely after getting a game over is kind of a load of bullshit. I know I'm a spoiled baby man, blah blah blah, born in the 90s, blah blah blah, whatever, fine, but considering that literally no game does it these days, even those that take pride in being hard, really makes it feel to me that it was likely a thing done due to memory limitations, not being able to save, and or just a relic from the arcade era in which such a thing still made sense. These days though, I don't really feel the need to replay the entire game after fucking up just a couple of times. But that's also just me though. I'm not saying that it's bad design or anything like that, it's just my personal preference. I am sorry.